I'm genuinely so excited because today we are doing a book haul. I have been saving these books maybe for about 2 months. So these books I have acquired over the course of 2 months, basically. So since the beginning of the year. And I am pumped. We're sitting on the floor. We have 2 huge stacks in front of me. I've not counted them because I don't want to do that. There's kind of a lot here. So we have a good mix of classics, translated literature, contemporary literature, and I'm really excited about it. I've actually read a few of the books in here already, so I'll call those out when I get to them. But yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Wait, let me just show you first. So we have that, and then we have a big stack in this beautiful Barnes & Noble tote bag, because I guess now I'm a premium Barnes & Noble member. Wow, that was hard to say. Which I actually did on accident, but it's really worked out in my favor because now every time I go there I get free coffee, basically. So yeah, we're back in our book buying swing, I suppose. So I've never heard of this book online before. I picked it up randomly in Barnes & Noble, but it is called Cold Nights of Childhood. I'm gonna have a hard time pronouncing that, so I apologize. Tizere Ozulu. It is translated by Maureen Freely. I think it's an absolutely stunning cover. You can see the translator and the name of the person who wrote the introduction on there, following the stream of water. That's absolutely beautiful. This book is translated, I believe, from the Turkish, so this is from Turkey. I picked this up because it was being compared to books like The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath and Jean Rhys. So Good Morning Midnight by Jean Rhys. Being compared to those 2 books, and I like those sad woman, sad girl stories, and it's beautifully short, so I'm excited about that. Trying to read more translated literature in general, but this year, I suppose. So this book is about a girl who is in and out of psychiatric wards where she is forced to undergo electroshock treatments. She's in between Berlin and Paris. She returns to Istanbul in search of freedom, happiness, and new love. So I'm really excited to get to this. Then we have Gabriella Clove and Cinnamon by Jorge Amado, which is translated by James L. Taylor and William L. Grossman. So this author is supposedly one of the most respected authors in Brazil. So this is a work of Brazilian literature. I believe it was from mid-20th century, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. Let's see, it's from 1962. It's set in 1925 in a booming town with a record cacao crop and aspirations for progress. Colonel Mendoca discovers his wife in bed with a lover. He shoots and kills them both. Political contests, too, can be settled by gunshot. And then we have Gabriella, who's a bedraggled migrant worker. She turns up in town and she will be the agent of change. I believe she's kind of like this innocent sex symbol, which I'm kind of apprehensive about reading this for that reason. I've also heard a lot of people say this reads a lot like a telenovela. So I'm glad I know that going into it. I can kind of anticipate the vibe that I'll be getting, but I think it's also going to be a lot to do with politics at the time in Brazil, which I think is really interesting just to kind of see what was going on, because that's not something that I necessarily know anything about. But again, I'm trying to read more translated literature, and this caught my attention. A lot of people really like it, so I wanted to read it. Okay, so we have this book here, which I picked up because it was one of my subscribers' favorite books of last year. So this is Titus Grown by Mervyn Peake. I literally had never previously heard of this book. I had not previously heard of this book. It is apparently the first book of a trilogy. Okay, it's the first book of a trilogy, which was written and published just after World War II. And it's supposed to be a gothic fantasy. It's set in this huge castle, and we're following Titus Grown. And that's genuinely all I know. Even after researching this a lot to try to kind of figure it out, what exactly this book is about, that's really all I've got. And after reading the back, so it's an undisputed classic of epic fantasy. It's part of the Gormenghast trilogy. As the novel opens, Titus has just been born, an heir to Lord Sepulcrave. He stands to inherit the miles of rambling stone and mortar that form Castle Gormenghast. Inside of Gormenghast, all events are predetermined by complex rituals, the origins of which are lost in time, Dreamlike and macabre, Titus Grown is one of the most astonishing and fantastic works in modern fiction. That's all I know about it. But hello, Jacob. I bought it because of you, and I'm excited to read it. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm very curious and excited. And then we have two works of modern fiction, which are both, they're either short stories or I think one of them's a novella, but we have two books by Claire Keegan. I just think her books are so beautiful. Look at how beautiful these are. These are stunning. These are absolutely stunning. I have Small Things Like These on my shelves. Yeah, I already have Small Things Like These on my shelves. I read it the year that it was longlisted for the Women's Prize, which I believe was about 2 years ago. I feel like people have been starting to talk about Claire Keegan online a bit more. I know her name has been very well respected, I think, since she started publishing her short fiction. I believe she's written, or she's won a lot of prizes. Her books are beautiful. Her books are genuinely beautiful. She's an Irish author, and I really like novellas. So Late in the Day, which are stories of women and men. So this is a collection of short stories. And then we have Foster, which I believe is a novella. A heartbreaking story of childhood loss and love from bestselling author Claire Keegan. So it's a hot summer in rural Ireland, and a child is taken by her father to live with relatives on a farm, not knowing when or if she will be brought home again. About love, lust, betrayal, and the ever-intriguing interchanges between women and men. So I'm excited to get to these when I get to them, and they're beautiful. Then we have, because I was just in the mood when I was walking around Barnes & Noble, we have The Color Purple by Alice Walker, which is just beautiful. Look at this beautiful hardcover. I know they just remade the movie, or the movie just came out, so I think that's why they were like republishing this like this. But it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning, and I just wanted this because it's The Color Purple, and I feel like it's something that's really important to read, and it's an American classic. Well, I think honestly though, the blurb itself, even if it weren't a highly lauded classic, or modern classic I should say, would have intrigued me on its own, because it's about a young girl who's writing letters to both her sister and to God, trying to work out why she's suffering so much in life, or she's just trying to understand life, which that plot, that synopsis really intrigues me. So yeah, The Color Purple. Okay, and then we have The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa, which is translated by Stephen Snyder from the Japanese, I believe. And this is about a housekeeper and her son, and she is the housekeeper for a professor mathematician who has has memory loss, so he only remembers like 80 minutes or something like that, and then he loses his memory again and kind of starts from scratch. Yeah, I know a lot of people online really love it, and that's the only reason that I bought it. Because I see the title all the time, and I saw it in the bookstore, and I said, you know, I think it's time to add that to my collection. So I did. Okay, then we have The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett, classic of crime noir fiction. A lot of people had been assigned this to read in college, for different literature degrees and literature classes. They made it sound very interesting. A treasure worth killing for, Sam Spade, a slightly shop-worn private eye with his own solitary code of ethics, a perfumed grafter named Joel Cairo, a fat man named Gutman, and Bridget O'Shaughnessy, a beautiful and treacherous woman whose loyalties shift at the drop of a dime. These are the ingredients of Dashiell Hammett's coolly glittering gem of detective fiction, a novel that has haunted generations of readers. Yeah, so I'm excited to see what I think of that one. We have some Jean Rhys, because I've never actually read Jean Rhys, and the first book that I mentioned I picked up because it was compared to Sylvia Plath and Jean Rhys, but I've read Sylvia Plath, haven't yet read Jean Rhys, and I have two of her books in this haul. This is the first. It is Wide Sargasso Sea, which is the famous classic that's kind of reimagining the life of the madwoman in the attic from Jane Eyre. I'm really excited about this one too. Okay, so like I said, I'm trying to read more books from around the world. It's an Argentinian novel which is translated by Julia Sanchez, and that is Earth Eater by Dolores Reyes. In an unnamed slum in Argentina, a young woman can't stop eating earth. Her odd compulsion gives her visions of the murdered and disappeared, burdening her with secrets she'd rather not know. Earth Eater keeps her disturbing visions to herself, but soon enough, rumor of her powers spread, and desperate members of her community seek out her help to find loved ones and closure. Yeah, this book really, really intrigues me, and I'm excited to get to it when I get to it. Again, another work of translated fiction. We have Claudia Pinheiro's Elena Knows, which is translated by Frances Riddle. I really like these Charco Press editions. This book was huge the year that it came out and was longlisted, maybe shortlisted as well, for the International Booker Prize, and it was on a lot of people's best books of the year list. Not last year, but I think the year before. She learns that her daughter has died, and the police tells her it was a suicide, and the mother just does not believe it. So she goes out despite her illness to try to find out what happened to her daughter. And I know a lot of people absolutely loved this book. They said it was absolutely amazing, so I'm really interested to read it, and it's a really beautiful cover. And then the first book we have here that I have actually read, I read it as a buddy read with one of my friends. This is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. I finally read it. I finally read My Year of Rest and Relaxation, thanks to my friend who was reading it and told me, hey, this is pretty good, you should probably give it a go. And I'm really glad I did. I am really glad I did. I know this is like the huge TikTok sensation. Everybody online has read it and has polarizing opinions of it. It's kind of like the Catcher in the Rye of modern female readings is kind of how I'd put it. I don't know if I worded that correctly, but hopefully you all get what I mean. It's like a red flag book for women to love this book, which is so crazy and ridiculous. And The Catcher in the Rye is actually a really good read, but anyway, I digress. My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I'm sure you already know what this is about. It's about a woman who's a very privileged woman. She's a privileged, young, beautiful white woman, and both of her parents have died, and she's spending this year, basically she wants to sleep for a whole year to be reborn. It's a lot about grief, it's about depression. She wants to self-induce a year of sleep with a lot of drugs. So she takes many drugs in this book to knock herself out. I felt like the middle of the book was a little bit unnecessary. It kind of malingered a little bit in the middle there, and it felt a little bit disconnected from the whole point of the story. So I feel like 50 pages could have been chopped out at the middle and it would have been a better book for that. But I did really love this. I did really love this. As someone who has experienced really extreme depression, this reads exactly like that. It genuinely does. And I loved the way that it ended. Honestly, I really loved the way that it ended, because was my experience of how it felt to heal as well, to come out and kind of want to not get rid of material possessions, but realize the worthlessness of material possessions, and to just kind of go outside and find peace in the really small things like the sunlight and a blade of grass, which again sounds so simple and basic and dumb, but I think a lot of people can really relate to that if they allow themselves to realize that this is actually quite a relatable book, okay, if you've experienced depression at all. So yeah, that's My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I own it now, and I'm glad I read it. And then we have Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Sidawi, which was a finalist for the Man Booker International Prize. This was translated by Jonathan Wright. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to reading this. This is from the rubble-strewn streets of Try saying that sentence 10 times fast. Of US-occupied Baghdad. Hadi, a scavenger and an oddball fixture at a local cafe, collects human body parts and stitches them together to create a corpse. His goal, he claims, is for the government to recognize the parts as people and to give them proper burial. But when the corpse goes missing, a wave of eerie murder sweeps the city. Hadi soon realizes he's created a monster, one that needs human flesh to survive, first from the guilty and then From Anyone in Its Path. With white knuckle horror and black humor, Frankenstein in Baghdad captures the surreal reality of contemporary Iraq. That sounds fascinating. I'm excited to read this when I get to it. And again, I think the cover's really cool. And I also love Frankenstein in general. That's one of my favorite books. So yes. We have a separate piece by John Knowles, which is it's a classic American novel set during the early years of World War II at a boarding school in New England. So it's a boys' school, and I believe it's about a lonely introverted boy and a really outgoing boy, and they have some sort of friendship, and it's set during, again, the war, so it's about loss of innocence, and a lot of people love this, and I'm glad to have it on my shelves. We also have Ohio by Stephen Markley, which is a contemporary novel. It's set in 2013, and four former high school classmates converge on their hometown in northeastern Ohio. A drug-abusing young activist whose flailing ambitions have taken him from Cambodia to Zuccotti Park to post-BP New Orleans, and now back home with a mysterious package strapped to the undercarriage of his truck. Stacy Moore, a doctoral candidate reluctantly confronting her family and the mother of her best friend, and first love whose disappearance spurs the mystery at the heart of the novel. Dan Eaton, a shy veteran of 3 tours in Iraq, home for a dinner date with the high school sweetheart he's tried desperately to forget, and the beautiful, fragile Tina Ross, whose rendezvous with the washed-up captain of the football team triggers the novel's shocking climax. And then we have The Buried Giant by Kazuo Ishiguro. I'm also hauling, in this video, Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, which I have read. I read in January. I gave this 5 stars. This is gonna make me cry thinking about it, and I'm a crier, so we're gonna try to move on, but my eyes are watering. I loved this book, and I didn't think that I was going to. I was apprehensive about this book because I had previously read Clara and the Sun by this author, and I gave it 2 stars. I really didn't care for Clara and the Sun. I really didn't care for it, and a lot of people said that that book was really similar to this book and the themes in this book. So I didn't think I was gonna love this, but I loved this. So if you're at all apprehensive to read Never Let Me Go for literally whatever reason, I'd really recommend reading it. And it's such a slow, quiet book that really creeps up on you. But you are just, it's like it weaves a magical spell over your body, mind, and soul, and you just have to, that's all I wanted to do was read this book. All I wanted to do was read this book, and it's like, it's so quiet. It's such a quiet read. But oh my gosh, I sobbed. I genuinely sobbed. So yeah, after reading Never Let Me Go, I picked up The Buried Giant because I wanted to add more of Kazuo Ishiguro to my shelves. I already have The Remains of the Day by him on my shelves, which I know is his other most famous title that he has. But The Buried Giant really has my attention. It's in post-Arthurian Britain. The wars that once raged between the Saxons and the Britons have finally ceased. Axel and Beatrice, an elderly British couple, set off to visit their son, whom they haven't seen in years. And because a strange mist has caused mass amnesia throughout the land, they can scarcely remember anything about him. And they're joined on their journey by a Saxon warrior, his orphan charge, and an illustrious knight. Axel and Beatrice slowly begin to remember the dark and troubled past they all share. By turns savage, suspenseful, and intensely moving, The Buried Giant is a luminous meditation on the act of forgetting and the power of memory. Yeah, that really has my attention. I've heard mixed things about that, if I'm being honest, but the synopsis is totally up my alley, so I'm curious to read that one. What we talk about when we talk about love by Raymond Carver, which is a collection of short stories. And I heard someone talking about this on TikTok or Instagram Reels, I believe, and it just sold me on it. I'd been familiar with this title for a long time, and I just finally caved and picked it up. He's supposed to be a master of short stories, of relationships, and yeah, that's about it. He's writing about relationships. I also have I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman, translated by Ross Schwartz. This is another one that's kind of been going around YouTube lately. And I believe this was published quite a while ago. I, for some reason, because I've only recently been seeing it go all around YouTube, thought that it was a newly published book. But it says it was published in copyright editions, 1995, English translation, 1997 and 2019. But this is about 39 women who live imprisoned in a cage, watched over by guards, and they have no memory of how they've gotten there, and they have no memory of their lives before. Numberless years pass, and a young girl, the 40th prisoner, sits alone and outcast in the corner. Soon she will show herself to be the key to the others' escape and survival in the strange world that awaits them above ground. Again, this is one that has a little bit of like a haze surrounding it. I'm not exactly sure what it's about. I just know what I read to you, and that it's been on a lot of people's, who read very wide, like lots of different types of readers, favorite books of the year list, so I felt like I had to pick it up. We also have The Quiet American by Graham Greene, something that I've been thinking about reading for a while, and this is one that I picked up because of Better Than Food book reviews. I believe this was one of his favorite books of, not this year, but not this past year, but the year before. Maybe it was this past year. I don't know. It was one of his best books of the year, and it's set during the war in Vietnam. Two men, one is a British man and one is an American man, and they have kind of like a love triangle with this woman who's from Vietnam. It's also, of course, about the war. It's about the differences in kind of philosophies of the Englishman and the American man, and I've heard it's just stunning writing, and I'm excited to read it. I do own a book by Graham Greene. I think it's called The End of the Affair. I haven't read it yet. I've owned that for actually kind of a while, if I'm being honest. But I haven't read that yet. This one, I just kept thinking about it, and when there's a book in my head that I cannot stop thinking about for like a couple of weeks, it's just like every single day I'm like, oh my god, I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about it. I just feel like I have to pick it up, and this is one of those books. Then we have a Greek myth retelling by Colm Tóibín. I have such a hard time pronouncing this author's name. He's an Irish author. I have not read anything by him, but I believe his most famous book, or the one that I'm most familiar with, is Brooklyn. This one is called House of Names, and it's a retelling of the House of Atreus. So we follow, I believe, Clytemnestra, whose husband is Agamemnon. Of course, he goes away to the Trojan War. He comes back with Cassandra, but before he left, he sacrificed his daughter Iphigenia without telling his wife Clytemnestra, so he killed her daughter, essentially, and he goes off to war for 10 years, and she's plotting her revenge. Like, she's plotting to kill him the whole time he's gone, and when he returns, she does. So she's literally one of my favorite characters in all of literature. I absolutely love the Oresteia, the trilogy. This is from the Oresteia. Yeah, I love Clytemnestra, so I can't wait to read from her perspective. I think she just is such a cool female character. So yes, I now own House of Names. We also have, and another book which I've also read already, is Passing by Nella Larsen. I picked this up because the Barnes & Noble employees put it in a really nice display, and I saw it and I was like, you know, I haven't read that yet. That was going around online for a while when The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett came out, which was maybe like 5 years ago at this point, 4 or 5 years ago. And I know they made the Netflix movie, which I also watched after I read this, and I thought, you know, I'm in the mood, I'll pick it up. So I did, and here it is. I thought this was fine. It didn't do anything crazy for me as a reader, and I also thought the movie was just kind of fine. This is about two black women, and one of them chooses to live her life passing as a white woman. I believe it's set in the 20s, maybe the 30s, but I believe it's set in the 20s. Both been married and they both have children, and they kind of spark up a little bit of a relationship with each other. Our main narrator is apprehensive to have this spark back up this friendship. She feels some disdain for this character who's lived her life as a white woman, and we don't hear from the perspective of the other woman, but it's interesting to see how their relationship kind of goes on, and the relationship with this other woman who's described as like absolutely stunning, and everybody's just captivated by her, and she kind of has a little bit of, I don't know, it's referred to, or it's alluded to, that she has a little bit of a relationship kind of with our main narrator's husband. I don't know if it's a physical one or just kind of an emotional type thing. Basically, both of their opinions and sensibilities towards life are a little bit more, I guess you could say, daring than our main narrators. So it's a lot about our philosophies in life and how we choose to live our lives, whether or not we should live our lives, how we're told to live our lives, or how we should basically follow the path that is laid out for us, or if we should push against those barriers and kind of follow our dreams and follow our wills, kind of. So that was kind of the difference between our two main characters, which was interesting. I just didn't think it was anything spectacular personally, if I'm being honest. We also have Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto, which is translated from the Japanese by Megan Backus. I absolutely loved this. I did give it 4 stars. I absolutely love this. It's all about grief. So it's all about grief. It's about one of our main characters. There's basically 2 short stories in this, which I didn't realize when I first picked it up, but there's 2 short stories in this. Our first character, our first short story, our main character, has like a connection with food, and she enjoys being in the kitchen and cooking. So that's why it's called Kitchen, but it's about how people deal with grief. I think the 2 stories are kind of connected, actually, in a way. I think they're both kind of interested in food as well. But anyways, it's about dealing with grief, and it's beautifully written. I think the translation's a little bit odd at some points, but if you have not yet read Kitchen, I do recommend it. I've read a couple of things by Banana Yoshimoto, and I really like her writing. It's really quiet and beautiful and simply profound. Someone who I'd consider one of my favorite writers, she's certainly one of the best writers that I've ever read. We have Clarice Lispector, and this is An Apprenticeship or the Book of Pleasures. It's one of these Penguin modern classics, which I think I already hauled another one of these, but I honestly don't fully know what this one is about, but I'm just trying to collect all of Clarice Lispector's works. I've read a few of her books, and they're so stream of consciousness. They're so kind of like, it's kind of like a fever dream to read her books, but you can pick out so many sentences and quotes from her books that are so amazing. It's not even funny. So I'd really recommend trying Clarice Lispector if you're at all interested. She is a Brazilian author, and this is translated by Stefan Tobler. By the way, Lori yearns for love, yet is scared of herself and of connecting with another human. When she meets Ulysses, a professor of philosophy, she is forced to confront her fears. As both of them will learn to be worthy of another person, they must first be fully themselves. The book of which Clarice Lispector said, "I humanized myself." An apprenticeship is about the ultimate unknowability of the other in a relationship and what it means to love and be loved. That sounds fantastic. We also have another classic here. We have A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce, which is an Irish classic. I've never read James Joyce. He wrote Ulysses, which I just don't have an interest in reading at this point in my life, maybe when I'm older. But I don't think that I'd get much out of it, if I'm being honest. I don't think I'm ready for that. But I am really interested in trying James Joyce, so I thought this one would be the best place to start. Which I believe is kind of semi-autobiographical. It's about a young man who is an artist. He wants to be a writer. Again, we have our other Jean Rhys. We have Good Morning, Midnight, which is, I believe, about a woman named Sasha who's living in Paris, which is the city of her happiest moments and her most desperate, and she's in search of a fresh start. And then we have Wise Blood by Flannery O'Connor, which I did order online, and I wanted the really pretty cover. That's what I ordered, but this is what came. And I guess I'll survive. But this is a Southern Gothic classic. Again, I picked up because of Better Than Food book reviews, which I believe was his best book of this past year. It's the story of Hazel Motes, a 22-year-old caught in an unending struggle against his innate desperate faith. He falls under the spell of a blind street preacher named Asa Hawks and his degenerate 15-year-old daughter, Lily Sabbath, in an ironic, malicious gesture of his own non-faith. And to prove himself a greater cynic than Hawks, Hazel Motes founds the Church of God without Christ, but is still thwarted in his efforts to lose God. He meets Enoch Emery, a young man with wise blood who leads him to a mummified holy child, and whose crazy maneuvers are a manifestation of Hazel's existential struggles. I think the themes of faith in this and probably just pain in life in general, and how to reconcile with that, and morality and who to be and how to be and what have you. Sounds very interesting to me. Those themes sound incredibly interesting. I have heard that that's supposed to be a very sad book, but I'm here for it. Another book in which I've already read, which is the book that was the January pick for the World Tour Book Club, which is Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel, which is translated from the Spanish. So this is a Mexican classic, totally reads like a telenovela. I both enjoyed this book and also didn't like it, and I don't know how else to explain it. We follow this family in Mexico and our main character, who is the youngest daughter, and we have Mama Elena. She's the youngest daughter, and Mama Elena in this family, the youngest daughter is supposed to be the daughter. She's like destined to take care of her mother for her whole life, so she can't get married. And in the beginning of this book, we have our main character Tita, who is a beautiful chef because she was basically raised in the kitchen, and it has some magical realism qualities to it. Some of the food that she makes kind of changes the way our other characters act once they eat them, and it has like those magical realism properties to it. But she wants to get married in the beginning of this book, and her mom, Mama Elena, says, no, you cannot get married because you're supposed to care for me your whole life, you ungrateful little brat. And the mom is like, but you can marry my other daughter. And so this guy does, because he's like, yes, I want to be near you forever, my whole life, Tita. I really hated that dude. I have so many opinions with this book. Maybe I should wait to talk about it in my wrap-up. But, ooh, I really hated that dude. This book bugged me on so many levels. Like, okay, guy, you're just gonna go marry the other sister and expect Tita to just be there. And, like, you're just, like, living it up with this other sister, kind of, even though he definitely doesn't love her. I don't know, it just, like, it bugged me on so many levels. And that's what she did. That's what she did. The guy just bothered me. And there was another guy who was such a nice guy that she could have married and fallen in love with, but she didn't. I just don't see what she saw in that. I don't even remember his name. I don't see what she saw in that guy. I think his name was, is his name Pedro? I don't know and I don't care. This book bugged me on so many levels. So I didn't like it. But I did like it for the reasons being that I really liked reading about food. I really liked reading about food. And we have each chapter and each section for each month is a recipe. So we have, this is a wedding cake, and it shows the recipe for the wedding cake, and it starts with like how to make it, and then it kind of leads into telling the story of the family in that chapter, and it's tied into the food. So this made me realize I would love to read more about food, which is why I picked up Kitchen, actually, by Banani Yoshimoto right after this. But I just like, this like wasn't for me. But I am actually really glad that I read it, because it is a Mexican classic. And now I know about it. So there you go. We have Season of Migration to the North by Taib Salih, which is translated by Dennis Johnson Davies. Is about a young man who returns to his village in the Sudan after many years studying in Europe, and he finds that among the familiar faces there is now a stranger, the enigmatic Mustafa Said. As the two become friends, Mustafa tells the younger man the disturbing story of his own life in London after the First World War. Desired by women as an exotic novelty, Mustafa was driven to take brutal revenge on the decadent West and was in turn destroyed by it. It's supposed to be beautiful lyrical writing, and I'm very excited to read this. We have Ice Fields by Thomas Wharton. Far below the surface, Bryn is wedged upside down between the narrowing walls of a chasm, fighting his desire to sleep. The ice in front of him is lit with a pale blue-green radiance. There, embedded in the pure antediluvian glacier, Byrne sees something that will inextricably link him to the vast bend of ice and the people who inhabit this strange corner of the world. And it's about ice and glaciers. And we have a French book. We have Bonjour Tristesse. By Francois Sagan, which is translated from the French by Irene Ash. And this is supposed to be about a young teenager who is self-absorbed. She's 17 years old. And she is the very essence of untroubled amorality. And I think her father remarries, and she's upset about it. and she's plotting her own sexual adventures with a tall and almost beautiful law student. Oh, but the arrival of her late mother's best friend intrudes upon the girl's pleasures. Yeah, and the dad and this lady have a romantic relationship, and it pisses off the younger girl, I suppose. I'm excited to read this. I've heard decent things about it, and I picked it up. I like that it's slim, and again, French. We have Franny and Zoe because I haven't yet read this, and I really wanted it, and look at how beautiful this edition is. This is by J.D. Salinger, and this is just a classic, a 20th century classic that I wanted to have in my collection. I've been wanting to read for a while, and that is why I picked this up. The Iliac Crest by Cristina Rivera Garza, which is translated by Sarah Booker. And we also have Heaven and Hell by Jean Kalman Stephenson, which is Norwegian, if I'm not mistaken. I also picked these up because of Emmy from Emmy Reads, or because of Emma from Emmy Reads. She really influences what I pick up. That's why I picked up all of these 3 books, if I'm being completely honest. In a remote part of Iceland, a young man joins a boat to fish for cod, but when a tragedy occurs at sea, he is appalled by his fellow fishermen's cruel indifference. Lost and broken, he leaves the settlement in secret, his only purpose to return a book to a blind old sea captain beyond the mountains. He's not alone in his solitude. Welcome into a warm circle of outcasts, he begins to see the world with new eyes. It's about friendship between young men, I believe. And the Iliac Crest, I believe, is about a person who is visited by 2 women, one a former lover, the other a stranger, who ruthlessly harass him and claim to know his greatest secret. In increasingly desperate attempts to defend himself, he spirals deeper into a haunted past of disappearance and memory. And I believe this is supposed to be a lot about gender and identity. The Posthumous Memoirs of Bras Cubas by Machado de Assis. And this is supposed to be a memoir of a man, Bras Cubas, who has already died. He's the mixed-race grandson of ex-slaves. This is Brazilian. The ghost of a decadent and disagreeable aristocrat decides to write his memoir. He dedicates it to the worms gnawing at his corpse. We also have Confessions of a Mask by Yukio Mishima, which I picked up because of my friend who inspired me to pick up My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I haven't read any Yukio Mishima. This is translated by Meredith Weatherby, and this is of a young man confronting his homosexuality in a polite and repressive post-war Japan. We also have Beloved by Toni Morrison, which I already owned this, but in a different edition, and I just wanted this really beautiful edition to match my copy of The Bluest Eye. And this is just another American classic that I really wanted to add to my shelves. And I'm really looking forward to reading The Bluest Eye this year. But if I love that, then I have Beloved I can pick up quickly afterwards. I know that's going to be very, very sad, to say the least. I also picked up the last book by Kurt Vonnegut that I had not yet owned. So this is Kurt Vonnegut's Jailbird. So now I own all of his works of fiction, I believe, except for his short story collection In the Monkey House and his play Happy Birthday, Wanda June. Those are the other 2 works of fiction, but I have all of his novels, at least now. And I don't even fully know what this is about. This takes us into a fractured and comic, pure Vonnegut world of high crimes and misdemeanors in government and in the heart. This wry tale follows bumbling bureaucrat Walter F. Starbuck from Harvard to the Nixon White House to the penitentiary as Watergate's least known co-conspirator. But the humor turns dark when Vonnegut shines his spotlight on the cold hearts and calculated greed of the mighty, giving a razor-sharp edge to an unforgettable portrait of power and politics in our time. Kurt Vonnegut's like literally my favorite ever. So I had to have that. We also have Pedro Paramo by Juan Rulfo, translated by Margaret Sayers Pidden, a stunning novel from Mexico which depicts a man's strange quest for his heritage. I heard this is the story that inspired 100 Years of Solitude, or maybe it was the other way around. 100 Years of Solitude inspired this, but I believe this came first, if I'm not mistaken. We also have 2 Haruki Murakami books. We have After Dark and Kafka on the Shore. Not fully aware, like couldn't tell you too much of what either one of these are about. Do you sense a theme? Yes, I buy books on Vibe. I think a lot of people do that. Like, we have titles that we've seen around a lot, we've heard of a lot, we vaguely have a sense of what they're about, but not really. I think this is about a 19-year-old girl who she's waiting out the night in an anonymous Denny's when she meets a young man who insists he knows her older sister. So she goes on an odyssey through the sleeping city of Japan. It's like a journey at night. It's Haruki Murakami. I read Norwegian Wood, I liked it. And so I want to pick up more from him. Okay, again, trying to read more from around the world. And Kafka on the Shore, this is the one that I've been wanting to read from him the longest, even before I read Norwegian Wood. And here we meet a teenage boy who's on the run, and an aging simpleton who is drawn to Kafka for reasons that he cannot fathom. As their paths converge, acclaimed author Haruki Murakami unfolds readers in a world where cats talk, fish fall from the sky, and spirits slip out of their bodies to make love or commit murder in what is a truly remarkable journey. This I picked up at the bookstore. I'd never heard of it because it just sounded super interesting and I couldn't leave it there. And that is The Drowned World by J.G. Ballard, which I really like this cover. Look at that. Look at that cover. I believe this is kind of about nature and the climate crisis. The Drowned World is both a thrilling adventure and a haunting examination of the effects of environmental collapse on the human mind. Yes, please. Yes, please. The Drowned World imagines a terrifying future in which solar radiation and global warming have melted the ice caps and Triassic-era jungles have overrun a submerged and tropical London. Set during the year 2145, the novel follows biologist Dr. Robert Carans and his team of scientists as they confront a surreal cityscape populated by giant iguanas, albino alligators, and endless swarms of malarial insects. I mean, I couldn't leave this there. I couldn't leave this there. Not at all. Not one bit. Not for a second. 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, which again is just a classic that I didn't yet own and I needed to own. And then we have The Talented Mr. Ripley by Patricia Highsmith. I read Salt or Carol by Patricia Highsmith a couple of years ago, and I really liked it. I could tell she's like a masterful storyteller, and I really liked her writing style. And this is a book, again, that I've just been wanting to read for a long time, which is about a guy. He's the bad boy sociopath, Tom Ripley, and I believe he becomes obsessed with this man and like takes over his life. Which, does that remind you of a movie that's been really popular that was also a really terrible movie? Saltburn, anyone? Yeah, anyways, I've just been wanting to read The Talented Mr. Ripley for a very long time, and I finally bought it. The last two books, finally I've made it to the end, that I'm going to haul today are because I want to read some of my subscribers' favorite books of last year. So I asked people what their favorite books of 2023 were. I asked them on my Instagram, and a few lovely people responded, and I decided to, again, pick up their books and read them. So we have Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. Again, a book that I've heard of for a long time. I've always been very interested in reading it, been very intimidated by the size, but this is a book about the Wild West. The Wild West. That's all I know. It's supposed to have a large cast of characters, a huge, epic, sprawling story, again, set in the American Wild West. And I've heard genuinely nothing but good things. I've just been intimidated by the size. And then the other book that I picked up was The Painted Veil by Somerset Maugham, which is set in England and Hong Kong, and it's about the story of Kitty Fane when her husband discovers her adulterous affair. So yeah, looking forward to that. That is my haul. Finally, I've gotten to the end of it. This is like an hour-long video, I'm not even kidding. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if you've read and loved any of these books. I know some of you have, obviously, because I bought them because of you. But yeah, please do let me know if you love any of these books. Again, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and goodbye.